A note for our listeners. This episode of the NABS podcast was recorded in 2024 before James left his role at Havas. Welcome to the NABS podcast. NABS is the support organisation for those working in advertising, marketing and media. I'm your host, Louise Scody. Each week I'll be chatting with someone from our industry to find out how they support themselves and those around them through challenging times as well as the day-to-day. And it's all to help you support your own mental wellness. I can't wait to start chatting. This week, my guest is James Fox. James Fox is CEO of Havas London, a role he's held since March 2023, having been promoted to lead the creative agency just a year after joining as its Chief Client Officer. James has spearheaded a number of mental wellness initiatives at Havas, and he believes that creating culture-bursting work without busting our own culture is the way to go. This approach has seen the agency deliver some of its highest profile work to date, which includes Vanish's wonderful Me, My Autism and I advert. This became the most awarded campaign in Havas London history. James has spearheaded a number of mental wellness initiatives during his time as CEO, which includes free therapy and the creation of a shadow board to hold the leadership team to account. More of that later. James is also a proud dad to two boys. Welcome, James, to the NABS podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, very, very good. I mean, I little tired this morning, getting up after looking after two children this morning, and I forgot my glasses. So that's a classic moment of being a parent, most probably.
I love the fact that you shared that because a lot of people listening will have had various snafus relating to parenting, at least this week, if not today. I know I have. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I've wanted to speak to you since I read a piece that you wrote for Campaign ages ago, and you were talking about parenting and dadding and being in the industry. And I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So we'll talk a lot about that today. But first of all, I'd like to start off by finding out a bit about your own mental wellness journey. What challenges have you had to face?
Sure. It's been quite a short one, if I'm honest. It really started when I was in New York, I would say, when after introducing a brilliant mental maintenance partner, called Self Space, who we had recently brought into as a partnership with the agency that I was working at the time, and so got introduced to the world of therapy, I suppose, at that moment. And I think at that point it came with all the stigmatism of stereotyped. Do people have problems in order to have therapy? Should you be speaking to someone like a doctor so that you can access that? Should you be given a diagnosis or anything like that? But the reality and the truth of that was actually no is the answer to all of those things. When I was first introduced to the founders, they talked very brilliantly about what they provide, and they put it so simply that we spend a lot of time looking after and caring for various other aspects of our lives. And we talk about our diet, we talk about our health, going to the gym, and we spend a lot of money on that. And we maintain a sort of healthy lifestyle, but we don't do a lot of mental maintenance. We maintain our mental health, and there is a huge daily attack, I think, on us mentally all the time from various different angles. And actually, you don't need to be in a diagnosis situation to advocate or to realize that actually talking about stuff, understanding yourself a bit better, knowing how history relates to how you are as a person or how you react in certain situations could be triggers to various different things. Just knowing who you are and how you experience the world through the lens of being able to talk to somebody about it is actually a really important thing. And so that was where it began. I mean, it was sort of 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And it was really awkward to begin with, because you also have to be willing to talk quite openly about stuff that you most probably haven't talked about ever before to somebody who doesn't know you and is very objective, but has the ability to cut through and give you advice and guidance around why you're feeling in certain ways. So yeah, it started 5 years ago. It was really awkward, but it was sort of regenerative, I think, as a process for me understanding who I was.
Was there anything in particular that you faced that you found really challenging that you have spoken with your therapist about, knowing full well that therapy sessions are supposed to be confidential? I'm basically asking you to download the contents.
Oh, of course. I mean, look, there's loads of things. You start so top level and surface level on just how you're feeling, and then you get to really understand how certain things that have happened in your life impact how you are and who you are and how you behave and act, even right down to the friendships that you have, the biases that you might have, the relationships you have with your friends, your family, work, how you attribute your day to day, even the relationships that you have with your own family and your own children. And yeah, I mean, there's loads of stuff, loads of things that happened to me when I was growing up, the situation, the environment that I was growing up in. We have talked a lot about that and helped me understand some of those elements that have made me who I am. But I spent a lot of time on also my relationship with work, my relationship with my family, and finding a better balance with that, which is incredibly hard. I think that at that point, I'd placed a huge amount of emphasis on my professional career and my work being the the thing that I was underlining my whole personality and character around, and that is quite an unhealthy relationship that you can have. And actually, when I'd gone down that path too far, I'd sort of almost forgotten a little bit about who I actually was and my personal life and my friendships and my family and the relationships I actually want to have and need to have much more deeply than I do with a working relationship. So that became a bit of a journey for me, really, to sort of help pull back from that.
What do you think the point was when you went from someone who was placing work above your family to someone who is, quite frankly, one of the only men I'm aware of in the industry who's so brilliantly vocal about being a working dad, and who wants to have that hands-on involvement with your kids as much as you can? Because that's a real turnaround. What happened?
I mean, you got to make a choice. I mean, that's inevitably what happens, because work will always take, and you're in a situation where you need to give to your family and your children, and if that balance is unequal, you can't do both. And I've always sort of talked about, well, I personally sort of talk to myself about this, which is like, I have 3 children. Like, when you find yourself in the position of being in charge of stuff, I've got 3 children. I've got what I class as a angry developing teenager with achy knees and all the hormonal changes and the evolutions and things that you would expect from that moment in life, which is effectively the agencies that you work within. And I've got 2 small children, who are 1 6 and 1 2, who both need various different varying different relationships with them. So, but you got to choose, and the I suppose the hard thing between that is that choice is never an easy one to make, because both of those things pull you in very opposite directions. Both of them very contradict each other quite dramatically, and there are very difficult blurred lines at times to toe as well with those two things.
So what's an example of those difficult blurred lines, and how does that make you feel, and how do you manage it?
Well, I mean, look, it can get down to real practical examples. Do I have to work at the weekend this weekend? Do I have to work late? Do I have to be in early? Can I not be in attendance for a school event? Can I be there on a birthday that's really important? Can I be mentally available so I'm not exhausted and knackered when your kids might want to make dens at 8 a.m, but you're exhausted after a 70-hour week? Though it's all of those things. They're all real life things that you are constantly deciding between. I've got better at making sure that I'm at everything that I can be at, and that I can be available as I possibly can be for my children, knowing that over time I've sort of come to feel okay with the fact that the things that happen in work are often important, but they're not urgent, and there will never be a moment where you reflect on missing out on work. there will always be a moment where you reflect on missing out being there for your children. And so that's that you've got to make sure you are really happy with.
Do you have moments where you're trying to be present but you're not, and do the rest of the family realize that?
Yeah, I mean, all the time, all the time. I mean, work doesn't stop from just being in the office. It's not like you walk in, clock in, walk out, clock off, and everything's quiet. Um, I'm thinking about things all of the time, and and it's future planning all of the time. And so you are holding a lot in your mental capacity when you are part of running a business. And um, you then have to realize that that's most probably 80% of your mental capacity, and you're trying to squeeze the other personal stuff in. And so, yeah, they are really aware about it. Technology has made it so that we are completely we can be flexibly working and available all the time if we need to be. And to some degree, being in a creative industry and being on the service end of being a partner for clients who need stuff from you and who are reliant on you means that your availability is also incredibly important in that. And again, availability is an equal balance between that and your children. So yeah, I mean, I can be in a room, but sometimes not mentally there, and that has caused lots of issues at times where I should be more present, but I'm writing stuff down, or I'm emailing, or I'm responding to. And my family has been incredibly supportive of that for the most part, and understanding, and has also called time on when it's not good, it's not right to do that anymore, and you need to put that stuff down. But it's not to say that like it impacts my children. I mean, my 6-year-old is incredibly aware when I'm working at home. Is has And you can see over time has changed his approach and relationship with me when I'm at home and visibly working, to being much more standoffish and leaving me alone to get those things done, rather than trying to get my attention to do something else. And it's sort of sad. It's sort of sad to acknowledge that, but again, it's also the reality. It's also a reality that I'm in, and they're in as well with me.
So you can make that choice, but it's kind of up to a point because you've still got overlap between work and life.
There's total overlap. There's total overlap now, right? I mean, work. There is no work-life balance. There is just work. There is life and work, and they are completely interlocked with one another. Um, and and it is on you to put up a clear distinction and a barrier between when you need to turn off those things so that you can be fully present. But it's so difficult. It's so difficult. I'll go to bed thinking about work. I'll wake up thinking about work, and I'll be at the weekend with friends, family, and I'll still be thinking about what's coming up or what's happening that we need to be either fixing, changing, doing, and sorting out. You can't. It's very, very difficult to turn that thought process off. Almost impossible.
So I've got 2 questions. Firstly, how do you stop yourself from going into burnout with all of this stuff going on all the time, as many of us do? Is it that ongoing therapy, or is there something else you do? Secondly, making a complete assumption here, as a CEO, I would think it's easier to say, okay, bye everyone, I'm off to be with my family, than if you are at a different position in work, perhaps rising through the ranks. I don't know, whatever job you are, but you're not the CEO. And if you have a team leader who's maybe not that sympathetic to you, trying to juggle, or maybe your overall culture is not one that's supportive of working parents, how can you actually say, I really need to leave now, nursery's going to shut, I have to go and get my child, without feeling stigmatized and being punished for it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, the burnout bit is interesting. I mean, look, I've had burnout before, and I've had to take time off for it, and that was a real learning moment for me about taking on too much, and it took a long time to sort of clear that and understand the processes that I were putting in place in order that led to it. that was a process that I went through with self space in order to understand. So I'm much more cognitively aware of um, those character traits that I have that can lead to that, and so I'm very protective of not feeling those moments, and if I do, to pull back from them. But there are lots of things, right? It can be a drink on a Friday night, right? It can be a takeaway. It can be bouncing on a trampoline with your kids. It can be for a walk on the beach. It can be um, being with your dog. It can be going to the gym. It can be switching off your phone like at 10 o'clock, so you're not doom scrolling, or or just watching a movie, or being static for a bit. There are lots of those things, and it's totally different for everybody. Like I go to the gym a lot. I'm outside a lot. I'm playing with my kids a lot, and and I I all my eldest now really is will wake me up and be like, it's like he woke me up at 5:30 the other morning asking if I would go and play football outside in the dark with him, and I was like,
what did you do?
like, fuck it, yeah, let's go,
Brilliant.
Everyone was asleep, let's go, like. But you got to be you got to go and catch those things, because again, that was wicked, and that was a moment where you don't feel like ever being at work. But I think like from a cultural perspective inside an office, you got to be honest. You got to be honest. Got to be transparent. That you can't have the stigma of parents feeling bad that they have to go and look after their children. The most important thing in their lives are their children, and work is second to that, right? And I think there have been places that don't acknowledge that. There are places and cultures that will acknowledge the fact that work is the first priority. But when it comes to your children, children don't come and go. They are there for you all the time. They are the most important thing that you've most probably decided on having, and work needs to fit in and around that. And you know what? Put it in your diary. You're gonna go do pickup. Everyone understands and knows, and talk about it, and be open about it. And to stop you from doing things, you need to make sure you've got a brilliant team around you, right? You've got to make sure that the people around you are capable of delivering on what they can, that they're world class and excellent, and that you have some people who also look out for you. I'm just one person in the leadership team. We have an incredible partnership, and we are all joined at the hip. Me, Vicky Maguire, and Matt Springate, who's just arrived, along with Lorenzo, our chief design officer, along with our heads of, we are fully joined up to understand that if one of us is knackered, exhausted, tired, or we've got other priorities, or we need to be there for our children, our families, wives, friends, that we acknowledge that, and that we can stand in and support for that too. So that's hugely important to have that. If you don't have it, then it causes all sorts of issues.
So what happens if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I don't have that, and if I pick up or child sick or whatever it is in the diary, my manager or my team members or whoever it is would not be supportive? If you're just not working in a supportive, unfortunately, those unsupportive cultures do exist in some quarters. So yeah, what do you do? Do you look for another job?
I mean, unfortunately, they do. I mean, they do exist, and sadly, that culture and that openness does come from the top down. And I would say, look, if you are really struggling, then you most probably already know what the answer is. And if you find yourself in a relationship with work where they're a little bit more open to having a conversation about changing the way in which you work in order to make that feel better, then you've got to take advantage of and have the conversation with the right people to do it, and don't feel ashamed of having it. You'll always regret not standing up for yourself in that situation.
True. And on the honesty tip, I really love the fact that your LinkedIn title is Dad and CEO, and that you've got one of your roles listed as family time / head of bedtimes and snacks. Now, this is the only time I've seen a man write this on his profile. That is not to say that other men haven't done it, but it's the only one that I've seen. I have got mummy on mat leave listed as one of my job titles, because believe me, that's a job. And I actually had a friend of mine contact me and said, oh, you need to get that off. because that's not going to go well for you. And I really disapproved of that comment. And I just wondered whether you'd ever had any similar negative feedback for your dad and CEO title. But on the other hand, when you're hiring parents in your organisation, are you more interested in the people who are out and proud and are saying mum or dad in their profile?
Well, look, I'm sorry that you got that negative feedback. I think
Thank you.
that's ridiculous.
I know.
It's so ridiculous. It's part of life.
Exactly.
It literally is a fundamental part of life if you're lucky enough to have a child in any form. So it shouldn't matter. Look, I mean, when I was between jobs in my last agency before I started Havas London, I was like, I've got to update my LinkedIn, right? It can't just be a blank bit, and that was exactly what I was doing. It wasn't there wasn't any thoughts to the fact that I was making a statement. That was literally what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was head of bedtimes and snacks. Like that was my job for that moment, and I sort of loved it. So, that it was fine. And I am a dad first, and I'm a CEO second, and so that's true too, but not again like that's how I see myself. You know what, I've never had any negative comments about it, and I would hate to think that there are then this sort of stereotype stigmatism between men and women who post these things, which there most probably is, which is deeply unfortunate. But I've never had. I've only ever had it's so lovely to see you sort of doing that, and but why is it why? I mean, it's true. It's truthful. I didn't realise that by doing that, it would land with any weight or statement whatsoever, other than that's what I am.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And I still haven't forgot what my friend said. Some friend. Do you find at Havas that dads tend to take their full paternity leave, or are you not at that stage yet?
Yeah, they do. They do, definitely. I didn't answer your other question about the hiring piece because I should come back to that, because it does relate to the question you've just asked. We don't ask whether you're parents or not. We don't we're not looking for that. We're looking for diverse range of skill sets, capabilities, people, and it's people first. It really is. And so whether you're a parent or not, it's about you, your personality, your approach to work, your whether you're able to deliver on the role, your experience, whether you're going to be a brilliant cultural fit in the business. What else do you bring from a diverse perspective into the way we think, act, behave, approach stuff? So it shouldn't matter. But if you're lucky enough to have a child in any form, in any way, then we have brilliant policies. I mean, parents here have equal parental leave at Havas London, full 6 months, and men take it. And this has been a relatively new thing, but we've had a couple of guys off for we had our CFO off for 6 months. He took 6 months off when he had his third child. We had our chief design officer, Lorenzo, who took 6 months off to be with his second child. And I can tell you quite emphatically that time spent with your family and that child will be a better, stronger, deeper relationship than you ever had with that first one during that period of time. And guys feel very, very left out in water when there is a child that comes into their life, not quite sure what to do, how to behave, what they can provide. They're not really providing anything, so you're filling gaps and doing as much as you possibly can. But creating a bond during those first 6 months for any parent is crucial. It's so important to that relationship you have with them. And so but it's been fascinating hearing them talk about it, because of course they've talked about it in the same way as women talk about it. They feel like they've left their career behind, or they feel like will this stop them from coming back and progressing in the way that they had approached their jobs? The conversations are the same whether you're men or women, so you have to make sure that those transition plans are back correctly, that work doesn't suddenly take over, that critical relationship that you created and bond with your family and your new children can maintain, and that is properly supported and looked after. But I think it's been a brilliant shift to understanding the role of both parents when having a child, and long may it continue for us.
I think it's such a good point about that ongoing support as well, because whether you're a mum or a dad, when you come back off of that leave, it can be a bit of a shock, and you also don't want to just not see your child at all because you're so overworked, having
Yeah,
come back after time away.
yeah. I mean, couldn't agree more. And also, everybody's different, right? Every single person is different. Every single person's family situation is different. Every single child is different. We've got a returning mum who has come back this week. She said like her first child went straight into nursery and was brilliant. Her second child that she's now coming back to work with, she's like, has transitioned really badly, and it's been very emotionally difficult. And so you know what, being able to come in late, being able to leave when you need to leave, being able to work from home when you need to work from home, returning back in a staggered way and not suddenly coming back 5 days a week, all of those, every single option that you need to ensure that you feel in control, happy and confident that your child is equally in the same place, you can do. And that's absolutely the right way to approach it. And that goes for everybody.
100%. I will also say that at NABS, all of our dads have taken their full pat leave, and that they are as able as any of the mums to go and do nursery pickup, to go to parents' evenings, to work a pattern that suits them so they get time with their kids, which is all really good stuff. It's great to hear that's going on at Havas as well. Now, onto your mental wellness initiatives at Havas. So, what we're doing at NABS is training up managers at the moment, giving them the skills they need to support their own mental wellness and their team's mental wellness. It's really key in this to create safe spaces where people can speak up. So I was really interested to hear about your shadow board initiative, which I mentioned at the top, in terms of creating a safe space for discussion. So can you tell us about that and how you think that supports everyone's emotional health?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was a trial 2 years ago, and I read an article in the FT about where big sort of organisations and predominantly the tech industry actually were bringing in shadow boards, effectively a group of people in various different levels, but lower to mid level within the business. That wouldn't often have a say or a voice necessarily on the runnings of the company, but are right at the heart of the business and are most probably feeling the most pressure on executive decisions or things that are actually just happening day to day. And it was a really interesting read. And I thought, look, our agency isn't massive, but it made me realise that perhaps something like that might be really interesting just to try. So what we did is we asked someone to be a chair of the shadow board, which changes yearly, and we asked each department to put forward 1 to 2 people, mid level and below, that could sit on the shadow board, and then we created the ability for questions to be collated, or any conversations that need to be collated. They would meet once a month to openly talk about the things that was being discussed or brought up, or any issues, considerations, thoughts that the day-to-day people are dealing with. They then the chair of the shadow board then bring that to me, and we discuss that monthly too, so that I can really hear and see what's actually going on. Because there is it's easy to find yourself in a sort of a leadership bubble with a team of 5 or 6 people, thinking that a particular direction or a vision or a mission or the way in which you might want to change or operate or talk or run the company or go after some work, like, you can make all of those decisions really quickly in and amongst yourself, and you are obviously doing it while thinking of how it either benefits or impacts everybody else within the business, but you're still doing it in the silo. And so hearing the things that they're really dealing with, and also then discussing the things that we're thinking about with them, can provide a really sort of open and honest dialogue on shared interests. And so I can then deal with things that really deeply impact people on the day to day. I can bring things to them that we might be thinking about future, and they can also be included in that conversation. And it's been brilliant. I mean, just even down to our company meetings. If we have a company meeting, at the end of every company meeting, we have an anonymous shadow board Q&A. I don't know what's going to get asked, but they're curated by the chair of the shadow board, and then each person in the shadow board takes 2 or 3 questions that anonymously the whole agency is filtered into them, and that could be and it's so fascinating because it can be right down to when are we taking time off for Christmas, right? Right
The
to
important questions,
I
quite
know
frankly.
the most important question in the world, right? Right up to okay, what's the cultural evolution of the company as we move into 2025? And you go, and then there is a depth of every sort of question in between time. But what you realise is it really helps people understand and educate themselves on actually how a creative agency runs. And then you realise actually, if you didn't have this forum or you didn't have a thing like a shadow board, all of these questions would be talked about amongst themselves, and there would never be the transparent answers or educative moments that they might need to help feel better about some of the decisions that are being made. And so it works brilliantly. It's like it's mega awkward at times because you have no idea what's coming, and I don't want to, because I want it to be honest as a response. And and we say, look, if we don't know the answer, we'll let you know. Don't know the answer, I'll come back to you about it. But I think that provides a little bit more safety in being honest and open with the discussions that we should all be having, because it's not a six when you run a 160 person agency, it's not a 6-person agency.
Yeah.
You can only run it. It can only be as brilliant as it possibly can be for our clients if everybody is fully invested and can do their job brilliantly in it.
I think that thing about honesty and safety is really crucial. As I like to say, guesswork is stress work. And if people are making up information they think is happening, then they can actually get more worried than if you just tell them what the situation is.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. And we've seen it loads of times, right? We've seen how bubbles of points of view come up and they start to affect or impact other people, and they're not necessarily factual, or they could just be talked about quite openly about stuff. So yeah, it's been brilliant. We've gone through, this is now we'll be coming into our 3rd year on it. We refresh the team every year, and each time those people bring in something slightly different, which is lovely in terms of the process of how it works. So it's worked really, really well for us, and we'll continue it.
So we conducted our community consultation, All Ears, in 2023, and one of our key findings was that there is an assumption gap between generations, where they're kind of assuming things about their lived experience, and combined with that, because of hybrid working, that learning by osmosis thing that always used to happen is not so prevalent. There are pros and cons to that. And I'm wondering how the shadow board project might help to maybe bring generational understanding together, or make you realize what those younger cohorts are actually worried about and what they don't know, where they need help, and vice versa.
I mean, 100%, because they're yeah, of course. I mean, the generational divide is a real one, and that goes for everything, right? Whether your lifestyle, what you listen to, what you watch, what you're eating, what you're doing, your personal situation with whether you're renting for, just absolutely every aspect of your life is generationally divided, and you'll have different perspectives on that. The shadow board does help that. What's interesting as a part of that too is that you talked a little bit about like how we like to work and where you and what emphases we put around that too. I mean, the shadow board has sort of also been instrumental in helping be part of developing our learning and development and training programs that have been really, really important to bring in. Like ours were quite outdated when I joined, and that has been completely reviewed, because people need to know what they're doing. They need to know what their salary bands are. Again, it's open and honest and transparency. They need to know what their next career step is. They need to understand what progression looks like. They need to have access to training if they're not here. They need to be part of teams where osmosis is a really important part of the creative process too. So yeah, it has been an important part of really understanding a much more modern way of creating a working environment that enables that to happen.
I love all of that. I have always struggled in organisations where people aren't talking and sharing answers and being generous with their knowledge. So this is all really great stuff. How does the advertising and marketing community lift you up?
Oh my God. The thing that I've always loved about it is that positive creativity it runs through everything we do. And look, every single one of us can have a bad day, and it doesn't, and it can be affected by anything. But I can tell you that the working with a body of people and within a creative industry where everybody believes that things are possible, where everyone is looking to create something that's never existed before, where everyone is looking to make their own mark in some way, shape, or form, that energy is magnetic. And so you can really lean on that sometimes and draw on that to address some of the struggles that you might be facing at any one time, because those struggles are real. But in the end, the creative industry is a brilliant one to be in. It's incredible. So I think that it's all about people. Our industry has always been about people. The brands we connect with people are all about people. The brands we create and products we create have people at the center of it, and it's the people that make it special. And anyone that's ever spent any time in the creative industry or within the creative agency will recognise that culture of creativity, when it is flying, is you can feel it, and that makes you want to continue working within it.
I can't believe we've come to the end of this, but we have. This has been such a brilliant chat. Last question. What's the best lesson you've learned about how to support yourself?
Oh, God.
Ending with a big question.
That's a big question. Don't take the titles. Don't take the title too seriously.
Oh, interesting. Tell us more about that.
I think people place a lot of emphasis on being given a title to define who they are and how they should behave and how they should act, when really who they are was arrived you at that point in the first place. And so remember that you got to protect the person behind the title. Don't let the title overshadow you. Don't let it put you above the station. You know better than anybody else. And remember that work will always come and go, and everything else in life won't. So find the right balance and stand up for yourself when you need to give yourself some time, because if you're working in a place that respects that should work perfectly.
James, you've been an absolute delight. I have really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for being our guest. We will pop the links to everything we've discussed in the show notes, including James's marvellous LinkedIn profile, so you can put in your own parenting bit should that be relevant to your life. James, thank you so much for joining us.
You are more than welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed that.
Good, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Louise. Bye.
Bye.